Well, hi, everyone. Good to see you again. I'm Anne-Marie Green.
And I'm Vladimir Juchit.
So in just about a half an hour from now, the Senate will reconvene to hear closing arguments on whether to remove President Trump from office. On Friday, the Senate blocked new evidence from being admitted in the trial. That was a big blow for Democrats who wanted to hear witness testimony from former National Security Advisor John Bolton, as well as others.
On Capitol Hill today, senators will hear closing arguments from House impeachment managers and the president's legal team. After those arguments, the impeachment court will adjourn until Wednesday afternoon. That is when senators will vote on whether or not to impeach President Trump on charges that he abused his power and obstructed Congress. Amid all of this, President Trump is scheduled to deliver his State of the Union address to lawmakers tomorrow, and the race to unseat him in November is officially getting underway tonight as the Iowa caucuses begin. As we look ahead to today's closing arguments, White House correspondent and associate editor for Politico, Anita Kumar, is standing by in Washington, and the Wall Street Journal congressional reporter, Natalie Andrews, is joining us from Capitol Hill. Good to see you both. Natalie, let's begin with you. How will the process of today go? What can viewers expect to see today and leading up to Wednesday?
We are going to see the president's defense team come back. First, we'll see the House impeachment managers. Adam Schiff will probably give a very forceful argument for why senators should vote to remove the president. Then we'll see the defense team come back at that, and then the Senate will adjourn. And this is when we'll get to see senators start speaking on the floor. A lot of senators want to leave their mark on this trial. They want to finally have a chance to talk after having to sit still and quiet for several weeks. So for the next 2 days, we'll hear probably very eloquent, developed speeches from senators about why they're going to vote to remove the president or why they're going to vote to acquit him. And then this all leads up to Wednesday when the big vote happens at 4 p.m.
So, Anita, the vote to block new evidence on Friday was a big win for the president's team. Now, the Democrats are sort of characterizing that a little bit as proof that this was not a legitimate trial. So I'm curious about the closing arguments for the defense, for the president's team. How are they going to capitalize on that vote on Friday?
Well, I don't think they're going to do much different than what they did in their opening remarks or their opening statements. Remember, they're feeling confident now because this was the big question, whether there would be witnesses. They're feeling confident about acquittal. So you're going to hear some of those same arguments. There was a lot of back and forth before last week and the week before about, you know, is this legitimate and did they have to have evidence? I just don't think they're going to address that issue. They know there's not going to be any other witnesses. There's not going to be other evidence. What they're going to say is, as the evidence has shown, you know, he didn't do this, and they don't think it's an impeachable offense. So you're going to hear both of those arguments with that confidence, knowing that they are likely to have acquittal.
So, Natalie, as you know, a number of Republican senators have come out and they have criticized the president's actions in Ukraine. Of course, we know that most will vote to acquit him on Wednesday. I wonder, are you hearing senators still echoing the president's line that the call with Volodymyr Zelensky was a perfect call, or are you hearing for the most part that they are all in agreement that it was inappropriate, that he may have even crossed the line, but it wasn't impeachable and certainly not a cause to remove him?
You really see different buckets of Senate Republicans here. You see the Senate Republicans that say there was nothing wrong with this call, it's fine. Most don't use the word perfect, but many will say the president did nothing wrong, he was investigating corruption. That's, say, the Ted Cruz, Mike Braun camp, Kevin Cramer. These are Republicans from red states. Then you have Republicans like Senator Joni Ernst, who yesterday said she would not say the call was perfect, but she doesn't say it's impeachable. And a lot of Republicans will point to the high bar of voting to remove a president and say that the president's actions, while they may concern those senators, they don't rise to the bar of impeachment and removal of the president.
So, Anita, the president is scheduled to deliver the State of the Union address tomorrow. We know that his desire was to have the impeachment trial already wrapped up before he delivered that address, but it won't. The final vote will be the following day. So I'm sure that will be on his mind as he's delivering the message and as Americans are listening. But I'm wondering if you think the impeachment trial will have any sort of impact on the way he crafts his message.
Well, even when we realized that this was going to, go into this week and it would, the State of the Union would be right in there on Tuesday, White House officials were saying that, he's not going to address the impeachment. That doesn't mean he might not mention it, but the bulk of the speeches is designed to be what they're calling, their theme is an American comeback. So he's going to talk a lot about issues, which is generally what a State of the Union is, right? So he'll talk about the economy a lot. That's the thing that he wants to really drill home this year, that the economy's doing well, and he would like to take credit for that in the re-election campaign. But he'll also talk about health care and immigration, trade, some of those other issues. So he's going to talk a lot about his achievements. There might be some veiled references, but remember, this is one of the very rare speeches that the president gives where he actually reads from the teleprompter. It's a speech that they've been crafting for weeks now, not knowing exactly the timing of the impeachment trial that's going to be filled with policy. And so he might give some, make a reference to it, but I don't think it'll dominate. And he definitely hasn't ad-libbed the last few years. So I don't expect it to be a huge thing. But, everybody in that room's got to be thinking about it. And of course, he will be too, because it's just coming at such an awkward time.
Mm-hmm. So that's a good point, Natalie. I wonder, given what the president said over the weekend in his Super Bowl interview, that he doesn't feel that he can even work with Democrats. We know that at the State of the Union, there are cheers, and when you don't like something, you sit in stony silence. Yes. Will there be any moment, I mean, the president in this speech, if he doesn't sort of talk about unity amongst both Republicans and Democrats, will there be any moment that Democrats will clap for anything, or will the entire thing be, stony silence? And, given that in the past, for example, in the last administration, somebody basically shouted out that President Obama was a liar, could we see, a moment like that?
I'm going to throw in my guess for bipartisan clapping or approval. It's probably going to be the USMCA.
Yeah, that's probably, you're right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What are you hearing?
USMCA will definitely get claps and applause. Both Democrats and Republicans are proud of getting that done. If he mentions criminal justice reform, which he highlighted in his Super Bowl ad, that was a bipartisan deal. I'm remembering last year there was some applause by Democratic women when the president accidentally kind of referred to them and they got excited. So you could have moments like that. That's where Nancy Pelosi's famous clapping moment happened. And we saw the Democratic women wear white. So you may have moments like that where there's awkward applause or there's cheering. It's always a moment where lawmakers like to put their emotions right out on their face and let it be seen. So I'm sure we'll have some key moments that happen. And Nancy Pelosi sitting right behind the president, who she just tried to remove from office, is going to be quite a moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Natalie, I want to ask you about an announcement that CPAC made that they are no longer inviting Senator Mitt Romney to this conservative gathering. Of course, CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference. It's in reaction to his criticism of the president during this impeachment process. I'm really curious, what do you think that says about the Republican Party or conservatives in this country, and whether has there been any pushback to that announcement?
Well, I was remembering how several years ago when Donald Trump was a candidate, he wasn't invited to CPAC.
Right.
And now CPAC has completely embraced really the Trump conservative wing of the Republican Party and pushed that forward. Mitt Romney is in a unique spot. Mitt Romney is not going to likely run for president again. Mitt Romney has 5 more years before he needs to consider running for office again, or 4. But he's in a unique spot too, where he's in Utah, where while Donald Trump isn't well liked there, even though they are very conservative, they don't necessarily like his policies. And so it really is a fight between, say, a Utah Mitt Romney Republican versus Donald Trump, and we're still waiting to see where that goes. And when I talk to a lot of Republicans, they often say that the outcome of the fall in November, whether Donald Trump wins re-election, will really determine where the Republican Party goes. If he wins 4 more years, he will essentially solidify the Trump Republican voice. But if Trump loses re-election and you see different Republicans rise up, we may have that debate once again.
Is CPAC, Natalie, still though a place? I mean, I think it's interesting that you point out that the president wasn't invited before he became a viable candidate to that, because it was a place where fiscally conservative, socially conservative Republicans, like Mitt Romney,
right,
would do very, very well in that crowd. And now it seems as if it's become simply just a place where people loyal to the president of the United States, no matter what he says, no matter what he does, no matter what his fiscal policies are that go against what has been a typical Republican ideal of the economy, not to take away from some of the strengths of the economy, but the fact that we've got a ballooning deficit, for example, which would have been an anathema to a conservative Republican many years ago. So the question becomes then, does CPAC actually carry the same weight that it did pre-Donald Trump with, perhaps maybe independent-minded Republicans in Congress?
CPAC is definitely people who go to the CPAC, they're conservatives. These aren't swing voters. These are people who really are supportive of the president right now. But you do reflect a wider debate within the Republican Party. I mean, the care and concern we've seen over the deficit and the nation's debt in the Republican Party has faded over the past few years. We don't see the same energy and concern over that. Now, if a Democrat wins president, there's a lot of speculation that the volume on that concern may be turned up because Democrats are talking about larger programs that would expand government. But right now, we've seen Republicans being willing to support legislation that does extend the nation's debt. So that debate in the Republican Party over debt and that heightened volume has really faded.
Anita, I want to ask you a question about something that Vlad brought up. He talked about the interview that the president did with Hannity and how the president mentioned that he doesn't think he can work with Democrats moving forward. And it was very personal. He said essentially that the Democrats will do anything to win, even if it means being dishonest in regards to the impeachment. And it's clear that he's taking the impeachment process very personally and has developed some, or at least the way he speaks, it seems that he has developed some very personal feelings. That doesn't make any sense, but strong feelings about certain people, Adam Schiff being one of them. I'm wondering, moving forward after this is a president that at times has certainly displayed an ability to hold grudges. Do you think that the president will sort of hold it against the Democrats that they tried to impeach him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the comment was that surprising. If you remember, right before the House, after the election in the midterm elections, before the Democrats took over the House, he was asked something similar, made a remark after they won an election, and he kind of said, well, if they go after me, if they go after these investigations, of course, we didn't know about Ukraine then, and we didn't know about impeachment, he's going to have a hard time working with them, is what he said. I sort of took him at his word there, but, we saw last year prior to the impeachment that they did have some meetings, right? Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi came over to the White House. There were some meetings with the president, and invariably every single meeting ended up with some kind of blow up. The president walked out, the speaker walked out, there were some arguments. We saw some of those because the president opened them up to cameras. So, it hasn't been the best relationship, and I have to say in the last few weeks since the House voted and then this trial began, just talking to people that are close to the president, they say that he's been very, very angry. As you mentioned, it's very personal to him. He's very angry about it, and he has a drive that he's always sort of driven, but he has a more energy than he's had. They say to defeat them in 2020, both with the presidential race, try to get back as many House seats as they can, and so it's really that drive that's carrying him through this year. So I think it's going to be very difficult for him to work with them. That being said, both Democrats and Republicans have a vested interest to try to get something done, to show voters in November that they can legislate, that they can pass things. The USMCA, the trade agreement with Mexico and Canada, is a perfect example. It was signed, it was passed by the House, both chambers, during impeachment. So they have an interest there to get something done, and I think you'll see them try, but it's going to be very difficult.
Natalie, jumping off that, the fact that the president has been known to be vindictive. In fact, he's talked about that in his books, and that he goes after people that go after him, his supporters, counterpuncher, his supporters like that. Mm-hmm. I wonder, though, Dr. Jill Biden, the former vice president's wife, gave an interview to CNN, and she was asked about, for example, Senator Lindsey Graham, who the Bidens counted as friends. Many senators, Republican and Democrats, counted Joe Biden as a friend before he became the vice president. Obviously, he sat in that chamber for many years and built up relationships on both sides of the aisle. Now you've got Lindsey Graham suggesting that even after all of this is over, they're going to continue to investigate the allegations that, let's be clear to our viewers, have proven nothing as far as anything illegal or wrongdoing. Dr. Biden saying that, she thinks that Lindsey Graham has changed. What are you hearing from others in the Republican Party, in the Senate, in Congress? Are they privately saying to you, yeah, Joe Biden's a good guy, but when it comes to the politics of all of this, we've got to go with the party, we've got to go with the president. But yeah, we think Biden didn't do anything wrong, but that's not how I can present it to the cameras. Are you hearing any of that?
When Congress feels deeply partisan right now, it's an election year, and Lindsey Graham has said several times he's mad that only Republicans are being investigated, and he wants to investigate Donald Trump, or he wants to investigate the Bidens based on these accusations. That's not exactly true. There were several congressional oversight investigations during the Obama administration. We saw investigations into the attack on Benghazi. We saw the Fast and Furious investigation. However, in deeply partisan times, it seems like Republicans feel like they want to defend their own. They are upset about these allegations. It strikes me that something that Donald Trump was trying to get done, trying to get Ukraine to do, to publicly announce these investigations in Kiev, to start something possibly against a political rival, he's now gotten Republicans in Congress to want to go after, which brings it much more closer to home.
Except that when you get a member of Congress essentially saying that part of the reason they even launched these investigations, or they're thinking about launching these investigations, that they have successfully tied Joe Biden to some type of corruption that, again, let's point out, was not proven at all to be illegal. They gave that away, much in the same way that I believe it was Kevin McCarthy a couple of years ago, in the point that you made about investigations into Democrats, Natalie, when he went before the cameras and said, look, we got the Benghazi hearings started because we wanted to drag Hillary Clinton's momentum. Are voters going to fall for the same thing over again?
Senator Joni Ernst came to the cameras last week, and she's a Republican from Iowa, and she said it was right after the Trump defense team did a whole outline on Hunter Biden and the allegations and such like that, again, the Bidens deny any wrongdoing there, and there's nothing there, or nothing yet to be seen there. But Joni Ernst was like, I hope that Iowa voters listen to that. And so it does raise the specter of, will voters care? Will voters maybe worry that this could chase Joe Biden and come up later in October, just like they were with Hillary Clinton's emails, where there was no wrongdoing there either? So we'll have to see how Democratic voters, who polls show are primarily very interested in finding a candidate who can beat Donald Trump, we'll have to see how they take this into consideration.
All right. Anita, Kumar, and Natalie Andrews, always great to have both of you. Thank you so much for your reporting.